Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe Traina, and welcome to our 25th installment of Please Join Me. I have a wonderful guest with me today, incredibly versatile young man. We're about the same age. Actually, I think he's slightly older, but he's young at heart. Matthew Arkin is here, and he is an actor, an author, an educator. He's had extensive television time on shows such as Get Shorty, Hawaii Five-0, Bull, Aquarius, and Law & Order. He's been in a number of films, including Margot at the Wedding, Second Best, Raising Flag, and Death to Smoochie. Broadway credits include Neil Simon's Sunshine Boys with Jack Klugman and Tony Randall, and his debut in Neil Simon's Laughter on the 23rd Floor in 1994, where we first met. He's also appeared in Donald Margulies' Pulitzer Prize-winning Dinner with Friends, wherein Matt received a Drama Desk nomination. He is the Director of Acting Intensive Program at South Coast Repertory and an adjunct professor at Dodge College of Film and Media Arts at Chapman University. He is also the author, as I mentioned earlier, of a suspense novel called In the Country of the Blind, wherein his character, Zach Brandis, goes from attorney to building super, which as far as I'm concerned is a step up in the world. He also hosts with his brother Tony a podcast called Two Brothers Talk About Food and Movies, which I have admitted to Matt already. I have not seen, but I'm aware of, and I actually did tune in to an episode this morning wherein Lou Stadlin from the movie The Verdict, which was the movie that was discussed on episode 2, was interviewed. You may recall, if you've seen the film, he's the doctor that disappeared. And as we've also said, Lou Stadlin, if you want to make him miserable, give him a job. I hope Lou will listen, and he'll know what I'm talking about. And without any further ado, but one more thing that Matt's going to talk to us about, so there will be a little further ado. Matt has joined with two partners, Bruce Glassman, Mark Morosi, in the production of Spirits. And the name of the company and the liquor is called Batch 22. So I didn't get the pun there at first, but it's 9 o'clock in the morning. Matt rises early. I do not. Matt, welcome. Thank you for getting me up early. I'll get a lot done today. And tell me how you're doing. You're in New York for a brief time because you make your home out on the other coast, do you not?
I'm on the left coast. Yes, that's where I make my home. But I came back to New York in August of the pandemic because I lived alone in California and my mom lived alone in New York. And everybody else in the family is married or living with somebody. And we were the only two people who were completely alone. It got a little rough. So I drove cross country in the midst of the pandemic. I put a Confederate flag sticker on the back of my car the minute I crossed out of California, and I kept it on the back of my car until I hit Eastern Pennsylvania.
You didn't really do that. Did you really?
No, I didn't really do it, but I thought about it just to keep myself safe, to have a little camouflage as I drove across the country. In both the pandemic and the ramp up to the election. It was an interesting time to be traversing the United States, to say the least. People asked me what it was like. I said it was like that little scene in the movie 1917 between the moment when the kids talk to Colin Firth and the moment where they talk to Benedict Cumberbatch. And somebody pointed out to me that that's the entire movie, is that scene. And I said, yes, and that's what it was like driving across the country.
Had you done that before, cross-country drive?
I had driven cross-country once before, right after I graduated from college. I did it alone. Interestingly, I was supposed to do it with my buddy Bruce Glassman, and a number of things ended up getting in the way. So we didn't do it, and we've been talking for 39 years about taking that trip together. And we're doing it on July 4th. He's going to fly to the East Coast, and we're going to drive cross country. and we're getting ready to launch this new spirit brand. And we're going to bring samples with us and meet with mixologists all across the country and let them introduce them to our new spirit.
Mixologists, those are bartenders that go to school or, chemistry?
They're bartenders who call themselves mixologists because they want to step up in the world.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, since you're talking about Spirit 22, why don't we stay with it? Tell us how you arrived at the decision to decide to distill spirits and sell them.
Well, it was actually happenstance. I love to mess around in the kitchen. I cook, I do different things in the kitchen. I like to make cocktails. And I started playing around with some recipes for different infusions. I wasn't actually distilling anything. I was just infusing things. And I started playing around with different recipes, and I came up with something that when one of my buddies, Mark Morosi, the other partner, tasted it, he said, "Oh, we should market this." It was never my intent to go about doing this. I was just having fun at home. And he tasted it and felt like that it was different than anything out there on the market, that it's not a flavor that anybody's really playing with now. And it's very versatile. It's fun to drink on its own, straight from the bottle, drinking it neat. It's also wonderful in a whole bunch of different cocktails. And one of the things that we really feel it has going for it is everybody who tastes it says, whether they like it or not, they have never tasted anything like it. Most of the people like it. And everybody sits around and says, "Oh, I know what's in this." And they start naming ingredients, and everybody's wrong. Nobody has come up with what's in it yet, which is fun. Will I share it with you?
No, I can't, unfortunately.
No, I mean, will I share the ingredients with you?
No, I wouldn't ask you that. That'd be like asking the Colonel.
Yeah, exactly.
What are your special spices? That would be inappropriate. But I was going to ask you, how would you describe it if you wanted to, try to entice the audience out there?
It is herbal and savory. It's not like one of those sweet infused vodkas that's out there. It's a lot smoother than a vodka. And it's a little bit, you have to take it easy with it because it's a high proof drink like a vodka, but it's very smooth and people are surprised that it's 80 proof. So we've had some people get accidentally hammered on it because they think it doesn't have a lot of alcohol in it.
Well, you might want to put some sort of label.
A warning on it. Say, this is an alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, this is smooth, but it's not as smooth as you think it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, why don't we talk about the days before you were allowed to drink and make liquor? Would you like to tell us a little bit about the beginnings of Matthew Arkin and your early life?
Oh, wow. Well, when I was born, I was just a baby, so yes. I don't remember a lot of that.
Yeah, right. You were very young then.
I was very young then. I have very few memories of Brooklyn Women's Hospital.
You were born in Brooklyn's Women's Hospital.
Brooklyn Women's Hospital is where I was born.
Yeah, it happened. They didn't have room at Maimonides. That was a choice.
Yeah, I don't know how we ended up there.
Well, that's all right.
And I was actually, my parents split up right after I was born, which begs the question.
I don't think you had much to do with it.
Let's hope. And I lived with my mother actually till I was 7, my mother and stepfather. And then when I was 7, I came to live with my father. And it was a very interesting transition to go from living in San Luis Obispo, California.
Oh, I know it. It's gorgeous.
Beautiful town. But I was, living there with my stepfather who had raised me with my mom, and he was a professor at Cal Poly, professor of mathematics at Cal Poly, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and it was this very simple, somewhat suburban existence in San Luis Obispo to moving to, at the age of 7, to Manhattan, into the home of somebody who had just recently become sort of an overnight superstar, to the extent that we had superstars in the mid 60s. Very different than being a superstar in the aughts or the tens, somebody not like a Brad Pitt or those kinds of superstars. It was a different kind of thing back then. But my father had just sort of arrived on the scene with The Russians Are Coming and Wait Until Dark, and then The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, and he'd been nominated for Best Actor for 2 of those 3, his first films. And it was a kind of mind-bending experience to go cross-country into this new environment and this very different social scene, together with the adjustment of that, hi, you have one family. And my father had recently gotten remarried. So it was, hi, you're 7 years old, you have one family, now you have a new family. So it was interesting. It turned me into the warped person that you met low those many years ago.
Well, most kids are resilient, so I'm hoping that,
No,
you're
I never recovered.
you never recovered.
Never
No.
recovered. No. No,
Well, all the experiences you've had in life come out in your art. So I think that it was probably a good thing because, neurotic people are very talented, as we know.
Well, it has, I think, one of the functions it served was to make me you mentioned resilience, and I think it's made me very adaptable in the sense that sort of no matter what it is that life throws my way, I figure the first question I ask myself when anything happens is this going to kill me? And if the answer, those flow charts, decision-making charts. So the first question is this going to kill me? If the answer is yes, well, it hasn't been yet. But if the answer was yes, then that's the end of the story. There's no more decisions to make. If the answer is no, then we'll figure it out. And that's sort of how I look at things. If it's not going to kill me, I'll figure it out.
So that's great. You have a pragmatic approach, if I
Yeah.
may use that word, to life.
Yeah.
And people must be drawn to that because not everybody can essentially assess a situation and decide that there is a solution or there is a path to dealing with it, to moving on, to even assessing the situation. I mean, I like to think I'm good in a crisis. So far, that has been proven to be the case at times. My wife might disagree, but that's great. I mean, that helps you obviously in deciding and being successful in pursuing all these interests. And I want you to talk about them too. Obviously, from what I read, you began as an actor, yes? In your profession? No, you were an attorney. I'm sorry.
Well, I was an actor first when I was a kid. I started acting as a kid
Right.
at 8 years old in a short film that my father directed. And it was a short film with my older brother, Adam, and me. And we shot it at a home we rented for 3 days in New Jersey. And it was nominated for Best Short in 1968. So the very first thing I did was nominated for an Academy Award, and it's been downhill since then.
That must have been very heady. That's heady. How old were you? 8?
I was 8, yeah. Although I wasn't nominated, but the film was, and it was very exciting. But you talk about life and death experiences. You were there on one of those for one of those events, right, where I had to ask that question: is this going to kill me? And I didn't know what the answer was at my debut at your theater on 46th Street.
Yes. Well, I don't want to talk too much about that as far as my participation is concerned. Although there's that cute story that I've been telling for years, and folks who know me know it, that I became available. I was available, and as such, was the musician that recorded the outgoing Christmas song that
You
Max
were the
Prince.
sax. You were the sax player on that.
Yeah, yeah, I was saxy in those days. However, the kicker to the story is Mel Torme came to the theater, and he's the co-author with Bob Wells of the Christmas song. So I thought, oh, I maybe am a little self-conscious about this. He might read the playbill and say, who is this butchering my tune? So I approached him and said, Mr. Torme, that's a direction. I'm supposed to butcher your tune because it's in keeping with the end of the story of the play and this character's scene. And I'll never forget, he had a very tall blonde on his arm. And he said to me, I'll be listening, pal. So I thought, oh, okay. So hopefully, he'll be okay with this. And then at intermission, he saw actually there was a variety, a prop on stage. And there was an ad for him on the back.
Oh,
Someone thought that would be cute to tie him in. And so he wanted a copy of it, and I gave him a copy. But yeah, it just happened to turn out that they needed someone that night during previews who could record a snippet of the Christmas song, and I happened to be in the theater. So let's move beyond that. What was it like to have your debut in a Neil Simon play?
That was very exciting for me. Very exciting. Had always been a huge fan of his work, and I had known actually Lou Stadlin
Right.
from the time when I was, I think, 13 years old, when my father directed him in the original production of The Sunshine Boys. So I'd known Lou all those years, and then to be making my Broadway debut in a play with him, and have him be the first character on stage with me, because my character Lucas, as you remember, opened the show with the monologue to the audience, and then Lou would make this tremendous entrance, and the whole first scene was with him, and it was just such an amazing turn of events to make my debut with him, with this man who I'd known for so long and admired for so long, and then to find myself on stage with him. But it was also a terrifying experience, because I had come in late as an understudy in that show, and had, at the time I went on, only a couple of rehearsals in that role. And the show was going to be closing, and I thought I was never going to go on. And then suddenly to get this phone call saying, I got the phone call at 7:00, you're going on tonight. And I ran down there, and I think you shoved a few Darvon down my throat. And no.
I borrowed them from one of the ushers.
But a night, but I do remember that you got my I was married at the time. You got my wife and my sister-in-law in, so that they could be there. Last minute, you got them a couple of nice seats so that they could be there for my debut, and that was quite an exciting evening, and a turning point for me. On the strength of that one performance, then I got the role in the national tour of the show, and continued on the road with Lou and with J.K. and Allison Martin and Alan Blumenfeld, the rest of that wonderful cast. So it was really quite a great experience.
Now, of course, you've done a lot more, as I read earlier, TV, film, and you teach. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that, please.
Oh, sure. Teaching, I fell into teaching about 14 years ago, I guess it was. I had, as a lot of actors do, I had guest taught. I'd been asked to come into somebody's class and talk to their students, but it had never occurred to me to teach a class on my own. And I happened to be sitting in the lobby one day of HB Studio, where Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen taught, and I studied there with Uta Hagen and Austin Pendleton.
Ah,
And several years after I'd finished studying there, I happened to be sitting in the lobby at the school just because I was meeting a friend for lunch who was taking a class there. And the director of the school came walking through the lobby and saw me sitting and said, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, I'm just meeting a friend for lunch. And he said, would you like to teach a class here? And that had never occurred to me. And I said to myself, I thought, wow, that would be interesting. And like most actors, you're always looking for other jobs to give a little steadiness to the income. And so I said, sure. And I ended up teaching there for a few years, then moved out to California and started my own class there. And I have never had a teaching job that I applied for. I've always gotten teaching jobs because somebody heard I was teaching and said, hey, would you like to teach here? So I was teaching my own class in LA, and then I work a lot at the Theater South Coast Rep in Orange County, and they have a conservatory. And one of their teachers, I actually asked if I could teach there, and they said, no, we're full up. We have all the teachers we need. And 2 weeks later, one of the teachers left, and they said, you remember when you asked if we needed any teachers? We now need a teacher. Do you want to teach? And I said, sure. And they gave me the level 3, the scene study, the top acting class, the advanced acting class there, and I started teaching it. 2 years later, they offered me the position of director of their summer program, which is a wonderful full-time, a 7-week full-time professional training program for adults. So I took that over in, I think, 2015. And then at a barbecue 5 years ago, with a whole bunch of the teachers from that school, one of them, her husband was there, and he's a professor at Chapman University, and he and I chatted for about an hour, and 2 weeks later I got a call from him saying, do you want to teach at the film school? And I said, yeah, that'd be interesting. And he told me what he was going to have me teaching, and I said, it was all film production classes. And I said, I'm an actor, I'm not a filmmaker. He said, you grew up on movie sets. You've been making movies your whole life. You know this stuff. So he sent the syllabus over for the 2 different classes he wanted me to teach. And I looked at it and I said, yeah, I actually do know this stuff. I can teach this. And the parts that I didn't know, I taught myself. And I've been teaching there for 5 years now. And I love it. Absolutely love it. It's a great student body. It's a really wonderful faculty. The kids turn out amazing movies. And they also, because it's a fully fledged film program with every discipline and amazing facilities and equipment, these kids graduate from Chapman with their own posse, people they've been making movies with for 4 years. So you've got somebody whose concentration was directing, but he's had a cinematographer who he's been working with since his freshman year. He's got a production designer who he's been working with since his freshman year. She's got a screenwriter who she's been working with. So they get out with these little mini filmmaking mafias, and they're ready to take the world by storm. It's really exciting.
well, it's funny because you're not the only person I know who you might describe as an accidental teacher. And it's interesting. You have it in you, you decide to do it, and you turn out to be successful at it and to really enjoy it. And, let's face it, someone like you who's had all of these various experiences has something to say. I mean, you have something to share if you feel that you want to share it. So, I'm sure that your students and the faculty out there really appreciate the fact that you have decided to delve into passing on your experiences to the younger generation.
Well, there's nothing more exciting than seeing somebody get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because of the nature of the discipline that all of us are teaching there, nobody can be in command of every aspect of filmmaking. There's just too much for any one person to know. I would say that my strength there and what I'm focusing on most of the time is storytelling, character, plot, theme. And with my history as an actor and a writer and an English major, that's where my strength certainly lies. But I'm constantly learning so much from my student. I have students who know so much more about cinematography or editing than I would ever know. So the classes become these incredibly collaborative experiences where everybody's learning from everybody rather than the professor being the person standing on the mount passing down knowledge. A lot of it is more of a seminar feel. And so that's one of the things that makes it so exciting to me is that I'll come out of a class having watched something that a student did, and I've learned a tremendous amount. And in fact, one of the things I do is for each exercise that my students have to do every year, there are 20 students in a class, maybe 3 or 4 of the exercises each exercise might be a really amazing iteration of that particular exercise. And I will contact the student and say, can I have permission to have your film to use in coming years when I introduce this assignment? Can I use your film as an example of how to do it right? So every year, rather than hearing a lecture from me, they're looking at the examples of students from last year, the year before that, people they know who did these amazing little filmed exercises. And I show them examples from movies, of course, from professional films, but also examples that are equally extraordinary from people who know, from somebody who's a year ahead of them. And so it lets them know that they can do this also.
Sure. Well, I would like to see, perhaps, if they're available, some of that work, because it's interesting to me. I've done a little bit of that myself. So, we'll talk about that later on. Now, I want to move on because we don't have all that much time, but there are 2 more things that I'd like to discuss with you. Firstly, Matt, I want to talk to you about this podcast you have had for a little while now. I believe you've done over 40 episodes. Actually, it's a webcast because we can't see you and your brother, Tony.
Right, so, and we drop it as a podcast as well.
Oh, very good. So tell us about 2 brothers talk about food and movies. That's the actual title, or is it talking about?
We actually changed the name after a few episodes because a good friend of mine told me that we were idiots, and he was right. We changed the name to The Arkin Brothers Talk About Movies. We took out the food because, you can see all the metrics on YouTube and when people are watching. And the minute we started talking about food, people stopped watching. So we realized, okay, people want to hear us talk about movies. They don't want to hear us talk about food. And it came about, and we changed the name to the Arkin Brothers because occasionally my older brother Adam joins us as well. So we wanted it to be able to be the 3 of us when it can be. Although he's very busy, he's a very busy guy, it came about because during the pandemic, my younger brother and I would end up on Zoom talking all the time, just keeping each other company in our isolation. And we would be talking about movies and food and laughing. And so we thought, let's be idiots. Maybe other people want to watch this or listen to it. And we sort of think of ourselves, we're a little bit like the car guys of movies. We pick some good movies. Everybody says, how do you guys pick the movies you watch?
Well, you asked my question. You asked my question, so you'll tell us now.
Yeah. We pick it by saying, hey, what do you want to watch next week? And then Usually it's movies that are we try to stay away from classics, things that have really been critiqued to death. We're not running this as some highfalutin show. It's two brothers talking about movies they like. So a lot of the movies are movies like Nighthawks, right? Nobody's gonna take a seriously critical approach to the movie Nighthawks, but we have a lot of fun with it, and because we've both been in and around the industry for many years, we know enough people that we're sometimes able to get some fun guests. Like we got Lou Stadlin and Roxanne Hart on to talk about
The Verdict.
The Verdict. We got Lance Guest to come on for the Last Starfighter. He came. He was the last Starfighter himself. He came on. A week from tomorrow, we're doing a movie called Crime Wave, which is an early Sam Raimi, I believe. Nobody has seen it. It's available with commercials on YouTube or IMDb Pro. You can watch it with commercials. But the great Reed Birney, who you know, is in that movie as a young man. It's very silly. And Reed is going to be our guest a week from tomorrow to talk about that movie. I had lunch with him the other day and I said, we're going to do Crime Wave on the podcast. And he said, no, please don't do Crime Wave. I said, we're going to do Crime Wave and you have a choice. You can come on as a guest or you can sit it out and we will talk about you behind your back. So he decided it would be a better idea to come on and be able to defend himself. So we have a great deal of fun with it, and we try not to take ourselves or the movies too seriously.
Well, very good. Now, where's it available? I know it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. If you just search for the Arkin Brothers Talk About Movies, or if you just search my name, Matthew Arkin, it'll come up. And it's also available on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It's on 8 or 9 of the major podcast platforms.
Well, super.
So however you listen, you'll be able to find it.
Well, good. We'll mention that again at the end. I do want to make.
Don't think you're actually going to learn anything.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot. If not about the movies, I'm sure we'll learn a lot about you and Tony
and silly. Yeah.
And silly. Well, look, you could be serious but not solemn. So
yeah.
So I think that's good. I think it's great. Look, I'm a big movie buff. I'm going to tune in now that I have spoken with you and I'm intrigued. I knew about it before, but now I'm intrigued. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Now I want to make sure we have time for your book, to talk about your book.
Ah. Okay.
Called In the Country of the Blind.
Yes.
All right. So tell us, of course, you're interested in becoming an author. You come up with this idea, you write the book, and I know it's been very successful, but please tell us the genesis of this.
The genesis? It actually started during the tour of Laughter on the 23rd Floor. I started working on it. Inspired partly by my mom, my stepmom, who raised me, who is also a novelist, who wrote her first book when she was on the road with the first road company of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. She played Honey in the first road company of that the first touring company of that show. And my dad, she was trying to figure out what to do with her time during the day, and my dad suggested that she write, or maybe it had been her, maybe it was her idea. I like to think it was her idea. And she wrote her first novel on the road. And so I thought, you're in all these cities, you've got all this free time during the day, let's put it to good use. And I had always been a fan of the mystery thriller genre, particularly books that involved series characters. So although I haven't written the second book yet, I conceived the character of Zach Brandis as somebody who could have a continuing career as a sleuth or a gumshoe or whatever your favorite terminology, a hawkshaw, if you will,
A
uh,
shamus.
a shamus. Yeah, all those great different names for detectives. Um, and again, taking advice from my mom, who said, "Write what you know." Um, I I created a character who had been an attorney and was not happy with it. That life didn't turn out to be all he thought it would be, so he quit. Um, that's where the similarity ended. There was I quit because I knew I had been an actor and knew I wanted to return to it. Zach doesn't know what he wants to do. He just knows he's not happy and needs a change. So he quits the practice of the law and starts leading this somewhat, not so much isolated, but aimless existence until he takes a young woman out on a date, and they return home, and her roommate is dead. And he, basically in order to sort of show off for her, he steps in between her and the cops, insinuates himself into the situation to protect her because they're somewhat bullying her, asking her questions. And that's how he ends up initially involved in the case, is really just to show off. But then he starts to become interested in his own right and feel a kinship with the victim, who, like him, was somebody who had been at a turning point in their life and was somewhat lost and ended up dead.
Okay, don't give away too much, because
Okay.
we're going to encourage everybody, obviously, to buy the book, to read the book, to download
Oh,
the book.
yes.
But you have agreed graciously to read an excerpt. And so why don't you set it up and read something from your original novel, In the Country of the Blind, because I think that would also be a nice way to draw folks in.
All righty. I will. This is about halfway through the novel. Zach goes out with a woman who he had had a previous relationship with, or uh, had an opportunity to have a previous relationship with, and he passed it up and then was sorry. But he calls on her because she can help him get some information on the case, and they spend an evening out with a client of hers, and he learns something about what he's investigating. And as they're saying goodbye for the evening, she gives him some information that she wants him to be discreet with this information. And Zach says, "So why are you trusting me with this?" "Why do you think, Zach?" she said, and stepped forward. She stood close, head tilted back, her full lips slightly parted. It was suddenly very quiet, and the traffic moved in slow motion. I heard my pulse beat. "I thought you were happily married," I said. "I am. But there's always the one that got away, isn't there? Always some bitter with the sweet, and for every road we take, there are so many that we pass by. You must know that, better than most." She leaned into me and kissed me full on the mouth. I tasted the sake on her tongue. Then she pulled away and stepped into the deserted street. She stuck her hand out for a cab. One pulled over immediately. It happens for people like her, people who are christened into the covenant of the city. As she opened the cab door, she turned back to me. "I'm happy, Zach, but that doesn't mean I don't dream about roads not taken. You're one of the good ones, Zach. One of the good dreams, one of the good guys. Make sure you find a girl who knows it." She climbed into the cab and shut the door. It sped away, leaving me in the street with my empty heart and her taste lingering in my mouth. I turned up the collar of my jacket and walked uptown towards home, away from the small cluster of revelers outside the restaurant, seeking one more late night thrill before surrendering to the fitful sleep and a bloodshot workday. Around me, the night bent out of shape, the deserted streets of the meatpacking district eerie and cinematic in the cold night. My chilled bones felt the rumble of the occasional truck passing over the cobblestones, syncopating with the chattering of my teeth as I headed east toward the subway. The remnants of the sake in my belly helped as I ignored the cold, tried to fit this new information about the Melfis with what I already knew. It was no use, so I gave up. Maybe tomorrow I could put the pieces together. Right then I was too tired, too lost in loneliness and regret, the fantasy of Victoria. I wanted only to empty my mind. I don't remember the subway ride home. I don't remember walking up Columbus Avenue. I vaguely remember a noise behind me as I headed up the front stoop. Isolated images remain of what happened next. Hands grabbing me from behind, hurling me backwards down the stoop, the pain when the back of my head struck the iron gate at the bottom. I can recall the strong hands pulling me into the alcove under the stoop, away from the street. Feel the fists hitting everywhere, face, stomach, kidneys. Hear the voice shouting, "No more questions." Suddenly, the overhead light and commotion I could hear but not see, not understand. Then, inexplicably, Mr. Pooey was gently cradling my head in his lap. "It's okay, Mr. Zack. He's gone now." "You are okay, Mr. Zack. I call for help." I closed my eyes and let Mr. Pooey's voice fade to silence, let the light fade to darkness. Ow! Ow, that hurt. The back of my head got all banged up.
Oh, for God's sake. I was waiting for that 3-4 second pause so I could jump in with, "That's right up my dark alley." Obviously, you blew that for me.
And I ruined the moment.
That's
I'm
all
sorry.
right. I've had many ruined moments in my life. I'm used to it. As far as I'm concerned, and I'm a fan of the genre, and I've done a fair bit of reading of murder mysteries. It is steeped in the tradition of Raymond Chandler. I hear a lot of that in this writing, which I love, and it's really great. I mean, it moves and it's descriptive and it's moody and it's literary. So good for you.
Glad you enjoyed it.
No, I did, and I'm happy to pay for a copy. It would be nice if I got it wholesale, but I'm really, I'll throw some money your way, Matt, because
I'm happy to send you a copy.
No, not at all. No, I like to donate to the arts, and who knows, someday when one of these is made into an indie film, I actually have done a little work. I specialize in being a corpse, a dead body, and my métier is to be thrown out of a car up to 15 miles an hour. That's really what I specialize as. So if there is a scene where you have to throw something out of a car, if it's a body, please, I hope you'll think of me.
Absolutely. Of
Excellent.
course.
We've been talking with Matthew Arkin, who is an actor, an author, an educator, someone who co-hosts a webcast. I would describe him as the Renaissance Arkin. And I think that he's really come to a place in his life where he's been able to do so many things and do them well. I'm delighted that you've been able to spend time with us this morning, and it's been too long. So I'm also glad we've had an opportunity to catch up, and I hope that we will do so more often in the future.
Me too. It was a pleasure to reconnect with you, Joe.
Well, that's great. And I want to just reiterate that to the folks listening, obviously they have many venues, many outlets by which to see your acting work. They can and should buy your book, once again entitled In the Country of the Blind. And that's available wherever fine books are sold, online, I'm sure. And you can get a copy by mail. Can you download this book? I believe you narrate it online. Am I
I
correct?
narrate it on. Yeah, you can watch it on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. I read it, but it's also available for Kindle and from Amazon.
Great, good, folks. Make sure you check out Matt's book, and also his webcast. Once again, the Arkin brothers talk about movies. a silly foray into the world of cinema, formerly about food, but now he has decided with Tony that they're going to tell you all about movies without talking about food. Folks, thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Matt Arkin, the actor, the author, the educator, and the webcast co-host. I want to make sure we acknowledge that Tony, your brother, is part of this effort. And I hope you will listen in again, ladies and gentlemen, to Please Join Me. This is Joe Traina, and I wish you all well out there. Thanks very much.
You've been listening to Please Join Me with Joe Traina. Be sure to listen anywhere you get your podcasts. Keep up with joetrainamusic.com for news and new episodes. You can listen to Joe's latest recording, Tip of the Hat, on all major streaming services and wherever fine music is sold. This episode was produced by Caroline Voigt.